Hey YouTubers, my simple Memorial Day weekend project of adding a runaround to the Province and Worcester interchange yard turned out to be much bigger, as model railroad projects often do, subject of scope creep. As I started looking at adding that runaround and automating the turnouts, I decided, you know what, I'm going to go back and start automating, or at least having remote manual throws for every turnout on the layout. So I started to do that here where all the main industries are, and I have not yet gotten to add that runaround. That's going to be a future video. So let's take a look at what we did. Last video I showed you that I'm going to be automating this runaround here in the interchange yard with two Tortoise Machines and a double pole double throw switch. The turnout in the back there that goes from the main to the secondary on P&W is done with two manual push pulls, one for each turnout. They have to be kind of separated by space just because that's where the turnouts are. And this one's kind of tricky because it kind of goes around the corner. I may actually automate that back turnout as well. Just take out those manual pulls and just have a switch like I'll do here. And then I got a little carried away and I said, you know what, I should do automation, or at least remote manual operation for all the turnouts, and just make it easier for any operators. So I started drilling holes, actually finished drilling holes in underneath all of the turnouts. You can see the holes. They're bigger than 3/8 inch, which is what they recommend. And the reason I make them bigger is it gives you a little more margin of error, so everything works better. So you can install turnout machines after you've installed the track. It's just you got to be careful. It's a little risky because if you hit the turnout from underneath with a drill, you're going to tear it up. And I've done that a couple times, but I think I perfected the method where I take a drill bit and I mark it with tape. Well, first thing I do is I do a pilot hole right through that hole there, so I know where it's centered. I center the points, and then from underneath where that pilot hole is, I hit it with a bigger drill, and I come up to where the drill bit is marked in tape, and it basically comes right to the hairy edge of touching this. And because it's on Homosote, I can then just take a razor from underneath and scrape away any crud. So you can install switch machines after you've already laid track. It's a little risky, but you know, if you're careful with it, you can do it. And there's no way I was going to rip up all these turnouts. So in a lot of cases, I'm just going to do. I'll show you one that I've already done. I'm going to do these manual pull. It's all mechanical, basically. That's that turnout right there. So you don't have to reach across the layout anymore. And that's done real simply, just using 2 mil rod and these wire connectors as a guide. And then at the very end, that last wire connector is, there's a 0.39 inch piece of wire that's bent and goes up through the hole. And that's what moves the points. And you can see how that works, just back and forth. Real simple, real cheap. And I put a rivet through the fascia. That's how it gives it a nice clean look. And that's just shrink wrap tubing, or heat, the stuff you use on wire to make a little handle. So I'll do the same on a lot of these, and I'll label them so it'll be nice, because on the fascia you'll see one that says ADM, and that controls this turnout, which actually takes you to ADM. There'll be one that's labeled cold storage, which that turnout takes you to cold storage, and so forth. And then wherever there's a runaround, which this is actually a runaround here because it goes between the main and the secondary, those two will be wired together with tortoises. So one flip of a switch and they both move, because you never use a runaround. You have to switch both. You can't just do one. I'll also do this runaround as powered and connected together, Tortoise Machines. And this one here will be done with tortoises, the one in the interchange yard that I talked about in the last video. And then the one back here, this runaround, I actually did, in a prior video, I did each of the two switches has its own manual push-pull. which works fine, but I might just cancel those, delete those, and then wire that one using two Tortoise Machines in sequence. And then last over here, there's a runaround in the CSX yard, so that'll be done with two Tortoise Machines that are wired together. Everything else is going to be manual push-pull, like these two industries in the back of the CSX yard. I'll just have push-pulls there. Got to move some stuff to do it. The biggest pain on doing this whole thing, honestly, is just having to move stuff, you know. So you have electronics. I've got this light box here. It used to be on the other side, but I had to move it because the holes over here, you can see I had to hack another piece of the beam out to fit a Tortoise Machine for that runaround. You know, it's all doable. It just takes a lot of time and makes a hell of a mess. So anyway, more to the story. So here's how I drill up underneath already installed turnouts. And you know, you'll see I've seen some videos saying you can't do it and you should take the turnout up. It's the safest way to do it, but when everything's ballasted and weathered, and inevitably as you evolve your layout, you're gonna want to add either, you know, manual throws or switch machines. So it's good to learn to do this. I use, I think it's 15-30 seconds quality plywood. You know, the more plies in there, the better. So it wasn't the least expensive, but it's great plywood, doesn't really warp. And then this is Homosote, which I've talked about on my channel. It's basically like compressed newspaper, I think, recycled paper, and it's used for sound deadening. You can get it on lumberyards. Will order it if they don't carry it, and Homosote has a website. I order it at a local lumberyard here. I like it because it's much tougher than foam, but it's still soft, and it basically is very sound deadening. So it's equivalent to using cork roadbed, but it's sturdier than cork, and it holds spikes well. You can screw into it, easy to drill. So anyway, my tracks are laid right on top of this with ballast. I don't use any elevated track because it's an industrial area, and with the ballast filled in, it looks like it's slightly elevated, and that's fine for me. But if you have cork roadbed, you have to factor that in. So what I do is I take these two pieces of scrap just to give me an idea of what the depth of the layout is, and I know how far that drill is going to go up before it hits the turnout. And all you got to do, if you got a sharp drill bit, is you nick that where the point mechanism is in the spring. You could tear the crap out of the turnout and ruin it, and I've done it. But I've gotten confident enough now where I take this scrap and I mark with a Sharpie exactly where I'm going to be, right at the surface of that Homosote. And you do a pilot hole, and then I use this, which is a little bigger than 3/8. I don't know the exact size, I apologize. But bigger is better because you're going to have more degrees of freedom to move that mechanism. A 3/8 hole is pretty small when you're trying to get that enough space for the wire to move back and forth for the turnout. So you can see where I marked it, and I'll drill through the plywood, and I'll know I'll get through the plywood when the material that's coming out is starting to be Homosote. You have to be careful with these big bits. Go at a slow speed because they'll tend to pull and go faster than you think. So as I get closer, I sort of creep it slowly until I get to that mark, and I pull the bit out, and I can see that it has Homosote on the end. And I'm left with like probably 16 to a 32nd of an inch of material between the turnout and the hole. And I just go in. You know, you can use a dental pick, or I've got. This is my favorite. I've sharpened the end of this, almost razor sharp, and I go in that hole and I just slowly scrape out the stuff. You don't want to be aggressive because if you catch the switch, you can still damage it. And the dental pick works as well. And you just got to be patient. You got to get up under there with a flashlight, sit down with a cup of coffee, and put eye protection on so it doesn't get in your eye. And eventually, you're going to clear that hole out. And that's how I've made all the holes after installing my turnouts for the switch machines and for these mechanical, manual mechanical mechanisms. So it works, and it avoids you from having to tear up the tracks. So here we are mid-process, and you can see where I've drilled those holes from the bottom up. You get as far as the homosote, and that's where you just, if you do it just right, you can actually penetrate the very surface of the homosote and see through it without touching the turnout. What I like to do is go, hey Rigby, just a hair shy of that, so you can see on this hole over here, you can still see the homosote in there, that gray. And in that case, it's real thin. I mean, I stop just short of, there's probably like a 1/32 of an inch left of homosote. And then I just take, I take a pointer like this, which on one end it's got a real fine, almost like an angled screwdriver tip, and I filed that down to be very sharp, almost like a razor blade. And I'll get up in there and I'll just use that, and I'll go around the edges until it scrapes away enough of that homosote so you can actually see the switch mechanism, and you can see light through there. When you see light through there, you know you're good. But when you're doing that, you just have to be careful you don't catch the spring on the turnout. So it's a bit tedious, honestly, but it beats ripping the tracks up. So again, the process is you mark the drill to the depth that takes you right to the very bottom of the turnout, and then you use a tool to scrape away the extra homosote. And I suppose you could do the same thing with foam. And now it's to a point where I can actually put the wire up in there to control the turnout, which is what I've done over here on this one, which is completed. So there you have it. By the way, if you don't have one of these or a pair of these, definitely get them. I think it's another Amazon item, inexpensive. LED. So anytime I need to do any work under this layout, I just gotta have as much light as humanly possible. And this thing, you can angle it around and put it in different places. It's awesome. Great little tool. All right, so I'm going to show you how I make one of the manual push-pull mechanisms for the turnout. So these are the terminal blocks that I bought off Amazon. So I just take a utility knife and I cut two off. You don't have to worry about how clean the cut is. So this is going to be the piece that sits right under the hole, under the turnout points, and it'll go back and forth with that push rod, and there's going to be a wire coming up through the layout that moves the points. So again, 0.039 inch music wire. I'm not sure why they call it music wire, because I play guitar and you never use that on a guitar. But what you're going to do, it's going to go through one side, and then the push-pull rod, the 2 mil rod, is going to go on the other side, and that's what moves it. So to figure out where you want to bend it, just make it a little bit longer than this. I always do just for safety. You want so both screws bite down on it, because that's what's going to hold it in place. So I bend it up right about here. So I mark it roughly, and then I just put it in a vise and I bend it 90 degrees, and then it's going to look like that. And then you tighten the screws down, and then this will go up through the layout. And always make it a little longer so that whatever sticks out of the turnout points, you can just cut those off with a Dremel tool. So that's that part of it. All it takes to bend it, really, is just, I clamp it in the vise. You don't have to clamp it super hard. Bend it over, I take a little ball peen hammer and just kind of finish it off. And then you probably, it never comes out perfectly 90 degrees. You can see that. It's a little shy of that. So I just take my pliers and I just give it a little extra. There we go. Perfect, by eyeball anyway. And then you see that's gonna slot right in there. Just perfect length. And then you screw it down with those 2 screws. And then this piece is gonna stick up through the layout. And that's what's gonna move your turnout. These are the terminal blocks I use. I get them off Amazon. Look in the description. I have a link for you to buy them. They're not, you know, super high quality, but for making these turnout mechanisms, they work great because they're cheap and you use a lot of them. So I don't know how many comes with. Lots. So this is my second box. So I just cut them in, usually in 2s or 1, and I use that for the guides. The brand is Weewoo Day. Guess where that's made. But yeah, in the description you can find them. To find a screw that's the right length and the right width on the threads, and also has a head that fits in there, I couldn't find it at Home Depot. So the head just needs to be a little smaller, otherwise it's gonna break those things. But you want to screw these to the bottom of the layout. So what I do is I use the old, I've had this grinding wheel for, God, I don't know, decades. Safety glasses on. This thing is really secure, so it's not going to catch anything. And, you know, be real careful, obviously. I toggle the motor on and off because I don't want it on high speed, because then things get dangerous and you don't need it. So I'll get it going at good speed. I'll turn it off and I just rotate that. And obviously be very careful, your hands are closed, but I've been doing this for years, so. Notice I don't leave the motor on. You don't need it. Just use that momentum of the wheel. And then, you know, I test fit it. It's kind of a pain. And I'm sure, you know, someone in the comments will tell me you can find a screw, but I just go by whatever is available in the local stores and I make it work. Look at that. Perfect fit. So this is the last one on this section that I'm going to do for this video. I'm going to move down to the other end of the layout once this section is done. I like doing them section at a time, so I'm not just all over the place. But as I was saying, you got that a little bit of that homosote left, and you just take a pick, and you can see, maybe you can't on the camera, but you can see the stuff falling down. And you don't need much space. I mean, that's a good sized hole that I drilled. So, you know, you just want enough of the crap out of the way that when the wire goes back and forth, it will move the turnout. And you can see daylight through there, I think, through the camera. Yeah, you can. A little pinhole. What I'll do here is I'll put the thing in. And the way I do this is I will go, I keep a long wire. I don't cut it till it's already all assembled. And then I come up and I look at the top of the layout, and you just fish around until you get that in the hole between the points. And then I put a piece of painter's tape on it. And that just kind of holds it in place so it doesn't fall back on my face. There, so that's there. Alrighty. Get old to be crawling around the concrete floor like this, but so you see that the side that has that wire is here, and this side, hopefully you can see that. Get the light up there. This is the side that the pole is going to go through. And there's not quite enough length to go with one. So what I'll have to do is I'll have to cut this. I'll bend it so that it goes up closer to the surface, and then I'll connect. The way you connect two rods together is real easy. You just take one of these Actually, I may not even have to bend it. Let me show you how this works here. 2 mil rod. This is a long piece here, but just to give you the example. Now this secondary rod just goes into this piece, and you screw those two together and you got an extension. So when I move this, I move that one. So this one would go, I probably will have to bend it up a little bit, and then it goes into this piece here. And then when you push, moves the turnout. You can hear it. I've got the tape on it, but it's moving the turnout. You can hear it. So I would push this rod, pull it, and that's what makes the turnout work. So that, in a nutshell, is how you do it. So you connect 2 rods. You'll have another piece. Excuse me. This is the one that I trimmed down that screw head for, which will go right here. And the rod goes through this. So this is a guide. It's hard to see with my hands and all these wires. So that first one there is a guide for the pole to go through, and then this is the one that moves. So you'll screw this one, fix it to the plywood. And then on the other end, or here, I'll have to put one here, a signal one. And like you see here on this finished one, that becomes the stop, so you're not pushing it too far. It gives it a nice solid stop. And just to make all sense, I'll just show you one that's all hooked up and working. It takes very little force. So that's how it's done underneath the layout. These are the pop rivets that I use as the openings to put the push rods through on the fascia, and also for the LEDs on the fascia. They're perfect for that. There's high utility to these. This is the size. It's 3/16 wide, or 5 millimeters, and it's 1/2 inch or 12 millimeters deep. They're not that expensive. I got a bunch of these from Home Depot. So there's a couple ways you can do it, and I've kind of learned and evolved the process. What I was doing is I would drill a small hole the same size as this through the fascia. Then I'd remove the fascia and I drill a larger hole so that I can crimp it, because when you crimp it, this part expands, and have pine behind the homosote fascia, so it wouldn't allow this to expand unless you had a larger hole. So I take these washers, I just happen to have the right size washers here, and I'll put it on there, and you know, the fascia material, the homosote, will be in between here. This will be the washers on the back of the homosote. This is on the front of the homosote, and then you got the larger hole behind it to allow this to expand. And then you just use the rivet pop gun. If you've used one of these, they're pretty easy. You just squeeze it multiple times. It pulls that nail through and expands the back, and then the nail pops out. And then you just take a nail and tap, and the little end of the nail will come out, and you'll have an opening to pass stuff through. Sometimes you have to drill it out a bit because it gets a little misshapen, but that's one way to do it. What I've started doing, instead of crimping it like that, because it's just a lot of work, is I just drill the hole through the fascia and the backboard this size, and I take out this nail so that there's just a clear passage through, and I don't crimp it. And to get it to stay in there, I just put a little coating of CA glue, and I kind of slowly rotate it as I put it in there, and then it stays in there. Because you're not going to have a lot of force on this. You just want something either to place an LED or to slide the push rod for the turnout. And to get this nail out, you just I just put it in a vise like this, and just a couple taps on the top of the nail, and it pops right out of the rivet. Doesn't damage it. So that's a simpler way to do it. I wouldn't, go my old school way, which was putting the washer and crimping in. You don't think you have to. So that's how I'm doing the finished look around the LEDs and the levers. And this is what the rivets look like when they're through the fascia. So that gives you a nice professional clean look to it. And then the shrink tubing to give it a little handle, just bent over. And then I don't have to mess around with those knobs that you have to epoxy onto the wire. I like to just take the wire, bend it over, and put that tubing on it. And nice hand controls. All right, now let's talk about the Tortoise Machines. I went into this thinking, the manual part is easy to do because you're just kind of using screws and rods and straightforward. And then I started working on the Tortoise Machines. I thought, well, this is actually easy. I'm just having to solder. And then the more I got into it, the more I went back to my original opinion, which is the mechanicals are definitely easier to put in. It's just that the wiring there's a lot of variables going on. In particular, if you're just using the machines to move the turnouts, that's fine. But if you want to have fascia lights like I do, it gets a little more complicated. So everywhere I have a runaround, I've decided I'm going to automate it with two joined Tortoise machines. So this is a runaround. And this also helps operators know where are the runarounds, because with all these turnouts you can get confused. A lot of them are for industries, but there is there's a secondary track here that a lot of the industries are off, and then there's the main line. And I've got two runarounds down there, one toward the mirror where the engine sits, one where those corn syrup cars are, and then there happens to be another one way up here. So I want those to turn together. So when you want to use this as a runaround, that switch will go that way, the switch will go that way. And I did that by wiring the two turnouts together. And I did not take the springs out of the points. I know a lot of people like to do that with Tortoise machines. I like the audible click, and I don't like to pull apart my expensive Pico turnouts if I don't need to. So you'll see they'll both move together. So now we're aligned to the turnout, and that's why this is red, just letting the operator know. It'll be labeled. The runaround, it'll say runaround, and when you go down here, you're aligned for each of the two straight tracks. And obviously I have not cut these extra wires off. I do that last, after I'm sure everything works. So a couple things. To do this, I also use these rivets. So I just took the nail out of the rivet and I just drilled a hole and CA glued those in there, and then I put the LEDs through and I wired the LEDs to the Tortoise machines. Now you'll notice that the light doesn't change until the turnouts are set. There's a delay. You can do it so that as soon as you flip it, it changes, but I like it to delay so that until that light turns green, you're not aligned. And the way you do it is you hook it up to the built-in switch that's on the Tortoise machine that's made for signals. And it actually doesn't go until the Tortoise moves over. So what I did is I used my 99-cent phone wire, and I hooked up all 8 wires using 2 pieces of phone wire on each of the 2 Tortoise machines. I think that's overkill now in retrospect, because when you're doing this, you're only going to ever use 5 of the tabs. So the tabs on these Tortoises go from 1 to 8, and 1 and 8 are the power supplies for the motor, and that's what you reverse when you want to change the position. It's a double pull, double throw switch here. And the tabs 2, 3, and 4 are used for the fascia lights. So the only ones I'm really using are 1, 8, and 2, 3, and 4. The other ones, I have them wired, and I have them all going into this block here in case I'd ever want to use them. Doubtful, but I may want to put track signals, so that gives me an opportunity to connect them just right into there. And then the LEDs, I just wired, you could see resistors to each of them where they come through the fascia. I'm not really, I wouldn't call myself an expert in wiring these Tortoise machines, so I don't want to. There's plenty of videos on YouTube, and that's what I use to figure it out. I think what I'm better at is these mechanical throws, and actually installing the tortoises and getting them to work, but the wiring is a little tricky. But the same process, you drill a hole under the track, you scrape out the remaining homosote, and you give it enough room to move the points. And I use double-sided tape to stick the Tortoise machine initially to the board, and then I just put one sheetrock screw just because it's easy to put in on one side, one corner, and then the opposite corner on the other side, and then make sure it's not going to move if you bump it. Sometimes that double-sided tape just lets go. So yeah, once you know it's in the right orientation, just lock it down and you're good. So they're wired together, and one throws the switch one way and the other throws the switch the other way, so that effectively I flip a button and my turnout is aligned, which is kind of nice because, and I'll have it labeled. This will be turnout. This will be run around 1, then I think, and then that'll be run around 2, run around 3, and I'm going to convert this one, which is currently manual. I'm going to convert that to just both of these go with one double pull, double throw switch. And then I'm putting one, this is where the whole project started actually. This was my Memorial Day weekend project. It turned out to be, I'm going to automate all my switches. So I'm adding a runaround in the interchange yard, so that'll have a double pull switch. And then lastly, I will wire up in the CSX yard there, run around to just one switch here. So yeah, this is all going to change the operations fundamentally, just make it more enjoyable and more intuitive, so you're not searching with your eyeballs and reaching and trying to figure out what turnout goes to what. Everything's going to be labeled. The industries, the runarounds, so forth. We got one here too. This one I've shown in the past. This one's hooked to a Blue Point switch machine underneath, which allows me to power these ground signals or dwarf signals. And the reason for that is that's at the end of the layout there, it takes you to the maintenance away from the main. So you want to make sure you're aligned to the main if you're running, particularly when I shuttle my trains back and forth. I use this shuttler that automatically drives the train from this end of the main all the way down to the CSX yard and the end of its main. So on this end, I want to make sure I have dwarf signals and facial lights to make sure you're lined up with the main, and the same thing on this end. Even though it's manual, it still gives you light to know that you're aligned to the main. All right, so these all the other manuals won't have any lights. It's just, you'll know intuitively. If you push it in, you're putting the points away from you. If you pull it out, you're bringing the points toward you, and I'll label as such. So when you push it in, it'll tell you where you're going. If you pull it out, underneath will be a label what you're doing. So yeah, this is going to be really a big improvement to the layout. Major project. I mean, it's taken days and days. what started out as, hey, let's just put another runaround in the interchange yard. I said, heck, if I'm gonna do that, let me start from this end and just do everything. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. So more coming on this. For the Tortoise Machine fulcrums, these are the plastic pieces that go at the top of the Tortoise Machine, and that's what the wire pivots on and ultimately turns the turnout. It comes with, you can get a set like this from multiple turnouts, turnout machines, or in most cases, each Tortoise machine comes with one fulcrum and one wire and one screw. I got an extra set, so I was missing some. But anyway, the wire that they come with is kind of thin unless you have a pretty shallow baseboard. It bends, for me it bends too much to be able to move the turnouts, because I go through 15, 30 seconds plywood and then like a ½ inch of Homosote. So it's got to go up quite a ways and still be rigid enough to move the turnout. So what I recommend using is this 0.039 inch music wire. I'm not sure what that is in millimeters, but it's quite a bit thicker. It will fit through the fulcrum. The only thing you have to do, there's a hole that you bend the wire like this. This is kind of the orientation they recommend. You bend this end so it goes into the black arm that moves on the Tortoise machine, and then you have a slight bend like that so that it, when it goes into the fulcrum, there's some tension there to hold it in place. So I do that, but just with the thicker wire. And because the wire is thicker, where this goes into the black part of the Tortoise, you have to drill it out a little bit wider, but that's not a big deal. Just take a hand drill. It's just a slight bit bigger hole that you need. And yeah, that just makes everything work a lot better. So that's what I did on all mine. All right, to finish up, I'm going to cut these extra wires that are sticking through the points. I'll just show you how I do one of these. It's the Cordless Dremel. I've tried doing it with snippers, but that wire, that 0.039 inch wire is pretty heavy actually. So, to get nippers in there and clip it without damaging anything else is kind of difficult. So I find that if I go in there with this and just cut it carefully without hitting the track or the ties, it does the job. So I'll do one, and hopefully it'll work. Safety goggles. Let's throw the one first. Okay, that one's gone. So it gets it pretty close down. If I had to file it anymore, I would, but yeah, that works. So I'll cut the rest of them off, and then I'll give you a look at at least this section, its final status or final state. All right, I cut them all off. What I like to do is get one of these little magnets, because the little pieces tend to get lost like that. You want to make sure you get them all off the layout. The big ones obviously are easy to find, but when you're cutting off a lot of these things, it's easy to lose track of where the metal lands. And I think we're good. Yeah, see a bunch of pieces there. And even some of the metal dust, metal shavings. You don't want that getting in your engines. And another piece. Just do it a few times. Okay, let's look at the final outcome here. And I like to work in sections when I'm doing a project like this. So I've got all the turnouts set here already, where I've got the main away siding set up. One of the first ones I did after that was the one here. And that either, when you push it in, it's aligned to the main. When you pull it out, it takes the train to the industries, that back track there. So I label them with a simple label maker. Then we move over here, and this is the second section that I started working on. And it's probably the most complex because I've got a lot going on with the industries here. So I'm happy that part's done with. And as we continue on, I'll do future videos as I do the rest of the layout. But this section took me a while, took me several days. So what we have going on here is we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 turnout controls. I need to put the little handle on that one, but that's easy to do. So they're all manual push-pull, mechanical, and except for this one, which is 2 Tortoise machines that control the runaround. So that one, let's just talk about that first. When it's red and it's up, it means this runaround, which is runaround number 3. So it's number 3. That one's number 2, which will be wired up. And number 1 is the one in the back where you see the Province and Worcester engine at the end of the food plant there. And then number 4 will be the new one that's in the interchange yard, and that'll also be wired the same as this. So when it's up, this runaround, which you can see here, it goes from the main line over to what I call the secondary, and it allows you to run around. It's a long runaround. So when you push the switch down, it moves both of those Tortoise machines, and now each track, the main and this secondary, are aligned away from the runaround. So it's very intuitive and very easy. And I like things to be intuitive and easy for myself, and also if I have guests over, it's more fun for them to just look at the board and know what they're switching. So that's this one. Then the manuals. The first one is, if it's pushed in, the top represents throwing the points that way. The bottom, when you pull it out, is pulling the points toward you. So this one is northeast distribution, or the main. When you push it in, you're aligned for the main. You pull it out, you're aligned for northeast distribution, which is that industry back there. So you can see that turnout move. And underneath that is ADM. And I may change these labels up a little bit, maybe use the ADM logo, or I don't know, but it works for now. So when this one is pushed in, you're aligned for the ADM facility. When you pull it out, you're aligned for the main. So let's take a look at that one. Now you're going into ADM, and now the track is aligned for the main. So push it in, pull it out. In is always away from you, out is you're bringing the points toward you. This one is for Ballard Print. So we've got all the industries here within reach. So if you want to get to the Ballard Print facility, which is the blue one over there, you have to pull this one out. If you push it in, you're aligned to the secondary, not to the main. So let's just show you that here. So I pull it out. That sets me up for Ballard Printing. If I push it in, that's going to take me on to the secondary track there, not the main. And then if we jump past the runaround, we've got the next one, which is the interchange yard, or the main. So this way, if you push it in, you're going from the main into the interchange yard. So push it in, now you're going toward the P&W interchange yard. If you pull it out, you're going toward the main, or you're aligned to the main. So it's labeled accordingly. This one here, this is Bombachi Foods. So if you pull it out, you're aligned for Bombachi Foods. And this is this one here. This is my only number 8 turnout. I like that gradual sweep. So pull it out, you're going to Bombachi Foods. You push it in, you're going on to the secondary track, which is where those ADM corn syrup cars are. So all of the industries now are easy to find. There's a myriad of turnouts here, but if somebody's operating for the first time, they can say, okay, here's Bombachi Foods, here's Ballard Printing, here's Northeast Distribution, here's ADM, and we'll do the same thing when we get to the CSX area, the two industries there. Another nice thing is if you're running the main and you want to make sure everything is aligned so you're not derailing, you just simply go down the board here. This has to be out, P&W main. This has to be in, main. This has to be in for main. This has to be out for main. This has to be in for main. This doesn't matter because it's off the secondary. So much more nicer to operate. Highly recommend it. I mean, I used to just go in there with a bamboo stick and change them based on visuals, but this way, it's like you're in a switch tower. You have to make sure you know where everything is aligned based on the labeling before you start moving trains. So it's really gonna make operations so much more fun. I'm really glad I'm taking the time to do it. And yeah, it's the stuff I talked about in the video. It's a combination of these mechanical throws and tortoises on the runarounds, 2 tortoise motors. And we will continue on. So next up is going to be, and I've already got the, haven't labeled it yet or hooked it up, but this is where the control is going to be for runaround number 2, which is actually here. These cars are sitting on top of it. And what is currently a manual with 2 pulls, and that'll be runaround number 1 at the back there. And that's going to be I'm going to take these out, change it over to a toggle switch. And then the new runaround here for the interchange yard will have a switch as well to control it. So there'll be 4 tortoise motors. They're on order. And then we move down here, and these 2 industries for CSX territory, Sims Metal, that will be a push-pull, and it's going to be real easy because it's a straight shot, and fortunately there's no beams in the way. And there'll be a push-pull remote manual throw for United Steel, so I won't have to reach over there and use a stick. And when there's cars in the yard, you can't really see what's over there anyway, so this is going to be a lot better. I'll have to move this, but no big deal. And then the last piece will be this runaround, the CSX runaround. That's going to be a toggle switch with fascia LEDs. This one switch moves them both. So another 2 motors for that. And everything else, a lot of it's already done. Like I've got the main curve turnout that goes into the yard done with a motor. The ones that are close in, like this, I have a Caboose Industries throw, just for something different. And then anything that's real close in, I just throw by hand. All the ones here in the interchange yard and the engine facility. I just don't like having to, be reaching across and trying to see behind cars on the more distant turnouts. Plus, if somebody's operating, I don't want them getting their meat hooks all over the layout and knocking things over. So there you have it. A lot to it. If you have any questions about what I did, certainly leave comments. I also have my email address that's in my YouTube profile. There's a channel email, and I'm always happy to help you out with stuff like this because I learn as I go. But yeah, pretty exciting project. Hey, I hope everyone's doing well, and have a great rest of the week. Cheers.